Hello everyone. I wanted to make this video a while ago, but I kept delaying it, and since Mordekaiser is getting a buff next patch, I said, well, I might as well do it now and also react to the buffs themselves and give my thoughts on them, as well as make the actual video that I wanted to do for a while now, which is to give some buff suggestions for Mordekaiser. In my opinion, he's not that great right now, and I think there are a few changes that could be done to him that could definitely make him more powerful in high elo without necessarily making him more frustrating in the lower ranks, at least from some of the buffs that I've thought of. In case you guys don't know, I am Federals, a Challenger League player who's been spamming a lot of Mordekaiser ever since his Sun Uzal skin came out, simply because I really like playing with this skin. So I got back into him quite a bit. I used to play him a lot before, but for a while I kind of dropped him, and then when the skin actually came out, I started to play him way more. And now, like, for this particular, I guess, split season, he's been kind of my main, like, ever since the skin dropped. And I think there are a few changes that Riot could do that could seriously make him way better without just making him stomp low elo more. So that's what I want to share today. But before that, I want to take a look at the buffs that he's getting next patch. I will put them up on the screen right now, which is just a Q damage buff in the later ranks. So rank 1 it doesn't give anything, but rank 5 it deals a bit more damage. It deals even more damage than it says so, because you have to take into account the fact that there's the isolation bonus as well. So if you were to hit someone that was isolated, the buff would actually be slightly better. But honestly, I don't think this does very much for Mordekaiser. It may be, and again, big maybe, it maybe ups his clear power in the first 5 levels, because by level 5 you're gonna have just a slight bit more damage. I don't think buffing the Q this way is good. Technically it's not bad because it's his main damage spell, but I think they could do way more to him, because right now that's not the issue that he's running into, at least not in my opinion. So with my thoughts on the buff out of the way, what would I actually change about him and what would I give him? I'll go from each of his ability from left to right, so from passive to ult, and not all of these things would have to be added. They're just a bunch of things that could be done either individually, or you could mix some of them within each other, and that would also be totally fine. But don't do every single buff that I mentioned here at once, because I think that would be too much. So first off, there's his passive, where it deals a bit of extra damage, right, on auto attacks and both with the AoE, and then the slight move speed he gets from it. That's fine. Now, what I think Riot could add here is something that would give him way more build diversity and maybe make him be able to adapt to way more situations, because he has that freedom to build more stuff. So before, like the old Mordekaiser, not like the very first one, the one after the Juggernaut update, you know, the one that could control the pet dragon, that one had some AD ratios on him, right? So instead of giving him attack damage ratios, what they could do is make his passive have like an extra passive, which essentially says any bonus attack damage he gains, he just converts into ability power, like the same amount. So if you get 10 adaptive force, you get 10 AP and a bit less attack damage, because gold-wise, 10 attack damage is more than 10 ability power. This would open up so many build possibilities for Mordekaiser. The first thing that you could actually buy, and like the item that would synergize best with him, would be Experimental Hexplate. This item essentially gives Mordekaiser everything he wants. Ultimate ability haste, good health, the attack damage which would be converted into the ability power, some attack speed, which is something that Mordekaiser severely lacks in his builds, because the only thing that he can realistically buy would be Nashor's Tooth, which gives him no health, or Wit's End, which also gives him no health, and this one is more niche. And that's it. It's not like you can buy any of the other bruiser attack speed items that you have available to you. So in this case, Hexblade would give him attack speed, ability power, health, ult haste, and the actual overdrive effect, where if you ult, you get attack speed and move speed for 8 seconds. It's like the perfect synergy item for him, because you're just able to proc your ulti, and then during the actual ultimate, you use the entire overdrive effect, right? The ultimate lasts 7 seconds, this lasts 8 seconds. It's absolutely perfect for him. And I think it would be very good if Riot did this. Another item that Mordekaiser could buy is something like Steraks Gauge, because Mordekaiser's base attack damage is actually not that bad. You can see here I am getting 58 attack damage from this item, because at level 18, Mordekaiser's base AD is 130 almost. So this 58 AD could get converted to something like maybe 80 ability power, or whatever the equivalent to the extra adaptive force would be, right? You then get the shield, and you're able to get a bit more tenacity. And you could say this about so many other bruisery items that give attack damage, right? If you look at it, you could say Shojin may work. Perhaps it won't, but it is more damage amp. It could be seen as a weaker Cosmic Drive, and I will admit that could be the case. Cosmic Drive gives him just 100 less health and 25 total haste instead of 25 basic haste, plus the move speed, right? So I can see that. But it could be something that Mordekaiser maybe considers at one point. Another item could be Trinity Force. Again, his base AD is quite good, so then you'd make use of the Spellblade effect, and you would have another item that actually gives you attack speed, where you severely lack it. You also get the Quicken effect, which gives you move speed on attack, which is great for someone like him because he even has slightly less movement speed than the average bruiser, because the average bruiser has 340 base speed and he has 335, so slightly low there. And a very underrated item that I think people would overlook on him would be Hullbreaker. And the reason I say people would overlook it is because they see, oh, it scales with attack damage, but it scales with base attack damage. So what this means is that because Mordekaiser has quite high base AD, the actual ratio on Hullbreaker won't really matter to him. It's not like it's going to be a weak proc effect because he doesn't buy AD. It's base attack damage. So because it's base attack damage and health, you'll still make use of the Skipper passive, which will then allow you to have more split push power. For example, a build you could do could be something like Mercs, in case you need it for anti-CC, you have your Hexplate, you have something like Trinity Force for more attack speed, you get maybe a Steraks Gauge, and then you could spec into something like Deadman's Blade for a bit more move speed, and then a Force of Nature. And this could be the endgame build. Sure, you don't have like the dash from something like a Hextech Rocket Belt, but when you ult someone, a lot of times in the late game, Mordekaiser just struggles to reliably hit his spells on mobile opponents, or even just auto attack them down because his actual attack speed is so horrendous if he doesn't just take Nashor's Tooth. And because you get something like this build, you have the 15% move speed on Hexplate, the move speed from Deadman's and Force of Nature, and then the attack speed from these two items, plus the actual Sheen effect. It could potentially make certain matchups like Kayle, where you really need your ult to be up as much as possible, be way more manageable, because maybe you still go into Cosmic Drive first, and then you go Hexplate. And then when you do that, you are going to have a total of 55 ability haste for your ultimate, because it's the 30 ult haste plus the base 25. The other thing to keep in mind is the fact that when Mordekaiser ults someone, he steals 10% of that person's attack damage. So in the late game, a lot of times if you were to ult like a Darius who has 400 AD, you're going to get 40 attack damage from him. That's good, you stole away 40 of his damage, right? But you're gonna do absolutely nothing on your end with that AD. As opposed to maybe ulting a Veigar that's like 900 AP, and then you get the 90 ability power. Sure, the Veigar may have less health because Mordekaiser steals more stats than just the attack damage, but the AD would be essentially useless for Mord. So instead, you could convert that AD into ability power. Thinking about what I change on his Q, I don't think I'd actually do anything to it. I think I'd just leave it as is, because I don't see an issue with it right now. I think it's in a fine spot, so I'd really just leave it as is for the time being. However, when we get to his W, here I have a pretty interesting change that I'd like to suggest. So right now, Mordekaiser W is not terrible. It's an okay defensive spell. However, there's a lot of matchups and lanes where even if you have the full shield at full health, you will still lose it. And that really, really sucks. Think matchups like Tryndamere, Warwick, Volibear even, where they just murder you in melee really, really hard, and you can't really do a whole lot about it. There's other matchups as well, and sometimes you just get burned through your shield completely. And I'm not saying that shouldn't happen ever, I'm just saying that I think in a lot of situations, Mordekaiser just has basically no way to deal with those types of champions. If you look at a champion like Riven, if you're 80% health and you have your W up, she could still 100 to like essentially kill you from that 80% point, even through your full shield W. With Ignite, and if she has like a pickaxe while you have maybe Giant's Belt cloth armor, if she gets you down to that 80% health, you're probably still just gonna get murdered if she has Ignite and just pops ult. And if you don't get murdered, you barely live. And I know this because I've played the matchup a lot and I know how insanely high Riven's damage is, especially early game. So what I'd actually change on Mordekaiser's W is give it an effect that gives damage reduction based on the percentage of the shield. So if the shield is the full amount, right, the full 30% max health, if you use it now, you would gain 30% damage reduction on top of the shield. Now, it wouldn't stay at 30%, and it would actually drop as the shield itself drops. So if it's the full 30%, right, on 100% shield means 30% of your max health. If it's that 30%, as it drops down, so does the damage reduction. So as you take damage, the damage reduction itself gets lower and lower. So it starts at 30% if it's full, but then goes to 25, 15, 10 as the shield drops. I don't think it would make him massively powerful, but it would help out so much in so many all-in burst matchups where he just gets completely run over and he can't do anything. And if there's some skepticism that, hey, maybe this is a bit too powerful, I would nerf his cooldown on the ability by a bit and add an effect where he slows himself down for the same percentage as the damage reduction. So if you pop your shield, let's say now when it's at 5%, I get 5% damage reduction, and I also slow myself for 5%. So if it's the full 30%, it's going to be 30% damage reduction with a 30% self-slow, which means that it is way, way easier to kite and space him out if his full shield is up. Obviously, that's not always going to be possible. Let's say he gets you in the realm and he's close to you with Rylai, and you don't have a way to space him out, sure. But most of the time, you should be able to space him way more. Like, a self-slow of 30% is very significant, or however much the percentage is, right? But the highest would be 30%. The damage reduction and self-slow would also be capped at that 30% amount. So if you buy an item like Spirit Visage that increases the shield, it won't actually increase the damage reduction nor the self-slow. Moving on to his E. This ability is extremely telegraphed. The main issue that Mordekaiser's pool has is that this ability is usually quite hard to set up without having some kind of slow on the opponent the higher you go in ranks, because it becomes easier and easier for the enemy to just step out of its way, either through movement or just using a dash to get out of it. For example, into a matchup like Fiora or Riven, you're basically never going to hit your Q. Someone like Riven especially, because she has literally 4 dashes that she can use, so one of them should get her out of harm's way. And there's not a whole lot the Mordekaiser can do about it. You just kind of have to wait for all of the dashes to be used, and then you can use it. And then maybe you can hit it if you set it up properly. What you could do here is slightly increase the cast time, so you make it just a bit quicker. And by doing that, you give them less time to react to it. You could slightly increase the width, right, on the sides. The actual effect I would seriously like to suggest here is that the ability grounds opponents that are standing on the spell as it gets thrown out. So you can see as it goes out, that area would ground opponents. Anyone standing in it would get the grounding effect. So what this means is that if someone is staying right on top of them and they have a dash, like a Riven Q, they won't be able to dash out of it because they will be actually grounded. They can still move out of it, they can use speed boosts on themselves, but they can't use something like a Flash or a Riven Q, Fiora Q, Vayne Q, anything of that sort, right? Any type of dash or mobility would be negated. And this would be really, really good, I feel like, because it would make the spell way more reliable. I don't know if it would necessarily make it broken, I have thought about that because that would be very good in a lot of different situations, because it would be a new type of crowd control that Mordekaiser has access to. So for example, in a team fight, there's situations where your pool is going to go on top of multiple people, but it will only end up hitting one because maybe the others get out of the way with a mobility spell. So when you do this, you automatically remove that mobility in team fights, even if it's just for a brief period. And it also denies certain ability uses. For example, Set can actually ult Mordekaiser's ultimate. If timed correctly, in the middle of the Mordekaiser ultimate animation, Set can use his own ult and then it will get mitigated. Nothing will happen, he won't be taken to the realm. But if you first use your pool to ground him and then ult him in the middle of it, he quite literally won't be able to use that spell to deny it because he's grounded. He can't flash, he can't ult. And this would go for a multitude of matchups like this. Volibear ult, Warwick ult, Yone snapback, because he wouldn't actually be able to reactivate his spirit because he's grounded for that particular amount of time. And honestly, out of all the changes that I'm about to list, after I go over his ultimate changes that I would suggest some, this one would probably be the one that I'd like to see the most. Giving him a grounding effect on his pool when someone stands on it. Not if they get pulled, just them standing on it. So that way, their only real means of escape just becomes movement, which will then make it way more reliable. It's still going to be difficult to hit in a lot of different situations, but at least it gives it more agency. And now about the ultimate changes. There's just a few here that I would like to say. First off, it says that Mordekaiser steals core stats. The thing is, movement speed is not listed here, even though I'd argue it is a very important core stat. So I think he should steal a percentage of the move speed. But I see why that wouldn't really be the case, because it would just give him more power in the realm, and then 10% move speed would actually be a pretty significant amount. So they would be able to dodge less abilities in the realm. So that's fine if they don't. What I'd rather see is something like lowering his ultimate cooldown by a bit. Right now it starts 140, 120, 100. Most bruiser ultimates start at 120. Think Set ultimate, Darius, Garen, Akali, even. Like most top lane champions have an ultimate of 120 outside of some exceptions like Kayle or Volibear where they are higher. And instead of buffing the early game, let's say they just wanted the 140 early on, they could make it 140, 110, 80, so it's buffed in the later stages, or maybe 140, 115, 90, just a small buff on the actual cooldown. They could also increase the stat steal from it. Right now it's just a flat 10%. They could do something like 10, 12.5, 15. Just a bit more on that stat steal. Make him stronger maybe a bit in the mid game at the level 11 spike. A lot of other champions have a massive spike at level 11 because their rank 2 ultimates do way more damage. For example, Darius gets a very big spike at level 11. Same for Garen, Volibear even, as some examples. And probably the last change I could suggest for his ultimate that they could do is take away his passive magic pen on the pool and give it to his ultimate while making it higher by a bit. Doesn't have to be by much, but just slightly higher. Right now it's 5 to 15%. Maybe you put it on his ultimate and it's something like 10, 15, 20%, right? It would make the mid-game pen a bit better. You get no pen pre-6, obviously, whereas here you could start to get the pen maybe from level 3, but once you get to level 6, it's 5% more. This would also make W max second more appealing in some situations, because if you were to max W second, and in my opinion there are matchups where you need to max W second instead of your E, you're simply not going to get the pen, you're just going to be stuck at that 5%. But if you tie it to his ulti, then you get the full pen later on, if not even slightly more. There could be more changes that the community suggests and that the Mordekaiser mains might have in mind, but these are changes that I personally think Riot could do to Mordekaiser, and it would help him a lot. The ones that I'm most hesitant on are the ultimate ones, because right now he's already very ultimate reliant to win most fights. In most situations, you need your ultimate a lot to actually win the 1v1 duel because of how massive the swing is. So I wouldn't exactly want to directly buff his ultimate outside of just making the cooldown maybe a bit lower or give the passive % magic pen to it. but that would be about it. Like the core stat steal from 10 to 15%, that could be fine, but it just makes him even more ultimate reliant, and then maybe they won't give him buffs in other areas. The two buffs I would really like to see would be giving his passive that AD conversion. Any bonus AD that comes his way just get converted, because it would open up a few more items, maybe like 5, 6, but that would be quite good. And then it would also make it to where when you ult someone like a 700 attack damage Jhin in the late game, that 70 AD actually gets converted to like 90 ability power, and you don't feel like shit for having plus 70 attack damage if you actually manage to kill him in the realm. The second one would be the pool grounding effect. So as the pool travels, you just ground someone as they stay on it. Again, they can move out of the way, but they can't use dashes, they can't use any type of mobility, no flash, and that would make it just way more reliable across the board. Because that's where Mordekaiser struggles a lot. The higher you go in rank, the more unreliable he is, especially due to his pool. Because it's so difficult to hit consistently without having some kind of slow on them or a CC, like a stun or a root. And then the W1 would be like the third, with the damage reduction and self-slow. I don't know if all three would be good to be done at once. Maybe you just nerf some numbers after you do this. Like maybe you take some damage off of Obliterate if it ends up being too much. Maybe you take some of the cooldown from his W. Maybe make his pool cooldown slightly higher, right? Just like some adjustments to the stats to make sure that he gets hit more because he gains so much. He would gain the damage reduction on W plus the self-slow to kind of even it out. But if that's not enough, you could make the pool have a slightly longer cooldown, right? Maybe instead of 18 to 10, it's something like 20 to 12. Maybe you slightly lower the extra damage he does on his auto attacks based on his AP. Like right now it's 40% ability power. Maybe you lower that down to like 30%. And maybe you also lower down the flat damage it does from 5 plus 30% AP plus the actual max health to maybe something like 5 to 20% AP. Just lower numbers because he would get way more reliability in his kit, which would help out a ton for high elo. And then the actual flat damage number nerfs would make it to where it is more impactful for the lower ranks, because the higher in rank you go, generally speaking, the better utility is over just raw damage, unless it's like some very specific situations. Like if Mordekaiser were to get this grounding effect on the pool, and then he got the damage reduction on W, combined with the ability for him to unlock new items, like even Sundered Sky, he could unironically buy this, because again, it scales with base damage, 100% base AD, and his base AD is quite good. It wouldn't deal a lot of damage. It does say that attacks against champions critically strike, but you're not going to use that effect, right? You could use Stride Breaker, where you get some attack speed. You don't really care about the cleave or the breaking shockwave damage. That's not why you'd buy it. It could be just the 100 with no increase, and that would be totally fine to you. You would only care about the actual active effect with the slowdown. This would be a very good alternative to something like Rylai's, because it gives you attack speed, and even though it doesn't give you the slow on spells, it gives you that active, which can potentially allow you to hit someone that's farther with the actual effect and maybe start a fight that way. You could use your stride into Q to hit it more reliably, or Stride Breaker into your pool to hit it more reliably. And with that, we've reached the end of the video. I want to thank you guys for being here for the entire video and for listening to my rambles and my ideas. I'm very passionate about the character, and I really want him to thrive and succeed in the higher ranks, because right now he's quite bad in most cases. Again, I genuinely just play this guy because I have fun on him with the new Sanuzal skin. I really like how smooth his animations are, especially his auto attack. Like this auto attack animation feels really good. His Q, when he jumps, I really like to look at it. The pool animation itself feels great, like again, to look at it. And then stuff like his ultimate form. I am genuinely mostly just playing this character because I have a lot of fun just looking at the skin and just seeing like the ability effects, the auto attack animations, and so forth. But there's a lot of different champions that are just better than him, and I just don't play them because I just don't enjoy them as much kit wise. But again, it's mostly due to the skin. This skin, I adore this skin, right? Personally, I really like this skin. I would love to actually have a chat with someone at Riot. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Maybe Riot Froxon, though I'm, again, pretty sure that's never happening, and give these suggestions directly to him, and I'd love to hear his feedback on it and his thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, maybe share it around. Maybe you think some of these ideas are good. Share your own ideas in the comments. Don't be afraid to do so. I want to read them and see what you have to say about it. If you want to actually see me play more, you can catch me streaming at twitch.tv/federals123. I'll probably play way more. I'll still play him. I don't think I'm gonna drop him just because I have fun with the actual character, and for me, I just want to have fun with the game. With all of that being said, thank you guys for joining me in this video, and I will see you on the next one, hopefully very soon.